Before the fleece is spun, it's necessary to separate the fibres a bit, so we usually brush it or something like that. Brush it or comb it. It's important when you do the brushing that you put the ends the same direction. Like if you look at a piece of fleece, you have a tip and you have a butt end. I'm going to spin from the butt end. With the sheep's fleece, it's very greasy, so it slides beautifully through your fingers if you spin it without washing it first. This fleece hasn't been washed. Well, I'm drafting out with my right hand. This is called a draft, and I'm holding with my left hand to keep the twist from going into the fibres in my left hand. With my left hand, I separate the fibres so that they don't get tangled and so that I get an even-sized yarn. I'm spinning what's called a worsted yarn because I'm spinning from the butt end, and worsted yarns are very suitable for weaving. Before factories were built in the Industrial Revolution, every household had a spinning wheel, or most houses had a spinning wheel, and a loom. And the women would make all of the clothing for the whole family, along with all of the sheets, tablecloths, tea towels. Everything was done on the loom or with knitting needles. Once you've spun one full bobbin of yarn, you then have to spin a second bobbin and put the two together to make a two-ply yarn, which is like this. Once you have that two-ply yarn, this one has been dyed of course, once you have your two-ply yarn, you can then go ahead and do some knitting, crocheting, or take it to a loom and do some weaving.
A loom, it is a framework that simply holds the warp threads firm. These are the warp threads running through the loom and out the other side. The loom holds the warp threads firm so that the weft threads, which is this one, and it goes onto a shuttle, like this. The shuttle carries the weft thread through the warp threads. It's beaten into place. Alternating threads are lifted by the shafts and the weft thread goes through again. This process keeps going. And slowly a fabric starts to build up as the threads are beaten down. The pedals at the bottom are used to lift these shafts, which are carrying the warp threads through the loom. And they are threaded in a sequence, which can be a plain fabric or sometimes a pattern. And the pattern can be altered according to how the pedals are lifted. Shafts are going up and down, and the cords are connected right through to the pedals at the bottom. Some looms, of course, are not nearly as complicated as this one. Some of the island people just use a wooden frame or a few sticks slung from a tree, and they can weave beautiful fabrics with lots of patience. It's rather slow, but they get there and their fabrics are lovely. This is our plain fabric that we wove here. In the centre you can see a little pattern where we used different pedals and it's formed a little sloping line. But it's the pedals that cause the variety of pattern and the way the threads are threaded through these loops here. They're threaded through in a particular sequence through all of those loops. That is the tedious bit, and when that is done the weaving can go quite fast. There they all are through the little loops. In the heddles, these are called heddles, and each thread goes through one of those little holes. And that, combined with the movement of the petals, is what causes our pattern. And that's another little pattern here that's woven in the same way. When the threads have been woven as far back as it's possible to go, and you have woven the length that you need for your fabric, we take some scissors and cut right across and at the bottom. Cut that off too and lift off the fabric. The fabric then needs to be washed thoroughly to finish it and pressed, and it can be made into a garment, something like that. That is a woven sweater, and also a little rug grown on the sheep, spun into a yarn and woven again on the loom.